Alright, now let's see whether or not it streams correctly. Oh, well, I guess the mic's in a relatively good spot. Let's see how long it stays there. Tell the world that we're streaming, I guess. Do-do-do. Do-do-do. Oh, I forgot to check and make sure that my mic is loud enough to actually hear. I guess I'll just hope it is. Streaming Indie Dev doing Dead Whales. Exciting. And again, over here. So we're going to go ahead and try and get this whale looking a little bit more whale-orific today. And basically that means that it's not just going to be a skeleton, because this isn't really about a skeleton. It's got to be a little bit earlier in the process than that. And once again, I'm looking at all of these whale fall images. And so what actually happens in the wild is that whales get most of their body eaten up pretty quick by larger predators. And what's left over is basically just the gristle, which is mostly white gunk. And as far as I can tell, it doesn't take long for whales to get stripped bare everywhere else. So even though I say that we've got to add meat, it's a little bit more complex than that, because most of the meat's already gone, which is good, because it would be pretty gross to have to model corpses all day. I'm trying to find an image. There are two images from active whale falls, or there are two visits to active whale falls. One I was around for. I watched it happen live, so I'm familiar with all those images. And the other one, I don't really know where it happened or when it happened. But aside from that, the only images of whale falls are long gone whales that are literally just bones. And I don't really want to look up whaling images to try and find a middle point. I think we're going to go ahead and just assume that the whales get stripped bare pretty quick. And we're going to sort of leave them as mostly bones, which means that I've got to make some changes to the way we're doing some of this stuff. Like the fat needs to be changed to be a little bit less stupid looking. How we do that, I'm not 100% sure how I should model the fat. I think what I should do is maybe sculpt it. Let's go ahead and try and sculpt it. So we're also going to need an image, a couple of textures for bones and for flesh. Right now we're using some hiccups, some very primitive images that are no big deal. Yeah, so these bones are actually a little bit sparse. They're far denser in the images I've seen, but that's fine. I don't think anybody will call us on that. What we do want to do, however, is change out this white stuff, because that is terrible looking. So let's get to it. Here it is. We also have to change some of these too. We'll get to that later. So this whale fat is just a whole bunch of blobs. And what we want to do is make it into a sculpt. So we're going to go ahead and, come on, find that quarter pixel where it actually allows you to do stuff. And then we'll switch over into sculpt mode. Now we should be able to tell it to do dynamic topo. And the idea here is that, well, it looks like it's not. I was hoping the dynamic topo would combine all of these meshes. Here's a remesh option. And why is it not letting me remesh? Oh, okay. Yeah, good, that'll work. Then we'll turn dynamic topo back on. So now all of these are one giant blobby thing. I'm using the mouse for this instead of the brush, just because I have to move the mic in order to use the brush, and that would be annoying, so I'm not going to. So we're using the clay thumb. I don't really know what the clay thumb is. It appears to just be an ordinary clay brush. I don't see any sign of it pushing anything. But who knows? We're just going to shtablorp, shtablorp. So you can see that what we've got going on right now is we've got x-axis symmetry turned on. We're going to have to turn that off. Whoop. Turn that off and make sure that it's off. Yeah. The reason we have to turn that off is simply because it's not symmetrical. The x-axis is not supposed to be symmetrical in this case. It's supposed to feel a little bit more interesting than that. So we've just got a little bit of blobuluring going on here, and we're going to try and push this to be a little bit more interesting. So let's use some, I don't know, maybe an inflate brush for just a little bit here to try and make it so it covers the bone where it needs to and doesn't cover the bone where I don't want it to. I think we might be better off using a thumb that's not the clay thumb. We want a grab brush, don't we? Yep. The problem with the grab brush is that it doesn't actually adjust the topology at all, which means that you end up with these vast stretches of terrible topology, very, very stretched topology. I'm not sure if there's a version of grab which allows you to... Elastic deform might be like a version of grab that allows us to change the topology. Let's find out. It doesn't appear to be changing the topology. It does have a much nicer fall off, but I have a feeling that that is not going to be enough for us and to, to create what we would like here. Let's try the snake brush. We got a snake brush. We got a snake brush. Yeah. Okay, so the snake brush really didn't stay on the correct axis at all. There we are. That's better. Move that back. Maybe we'll hit it with a little bit of inflate. Now, I don't like what we've got here. I'd like this to be a little bit more... What's this? Clay. That's a strange way to show clay. I don't think we have the topology we need for clay. We're just going to have to stick to the grab brush for a little while, I think. Basically, I want to hide some of the edges of the skeleton that are clearly wrong because I didn't bother to make the skeleton with any sort of biological value. I didn't really push it to be realistic. Because of that, we need to be able to make this skeleton hide some of the defects behind some kind of fat. The other thing we're going to do, however, is hide these whiskers, because these whiskers aren't going to be opaque in the real world, in the game version. So I don't want them to be opaque here. And the easiest way to do that is just to hide them entirely. So we've got some fat here and there. I think we're going to need to take a little bit more snake hooking to try and fill these elements in a little bit. Finding the correct angle is always a fun challenge. That's a little bit fine. We'll just grab here and pull it down. And then here we'll grab it and pull it up here. Oop, didn't work. Try again. Oh no, I undid something that I didn't mean to. Yoop. And then I want this to come up. Can I find a good... There we are. That's like how I want it. And we're just going to pack that in here as well. Yeah. And let's get this to be a little bit more friendly for sculpting. Now let's switch back over to... that clay thumb was a little bit strange, but it might have been a good idea. Where was it? Huh. Was I hallucinating? I guess we'll just use ordinary thumb. Oh, there it is. It's up there. I want to know what this is. I want to know... It doesn't seem to do very much of anything. Oh, that's so weird. Sometimes it does nothing, and sometimes it does, like, a million things. I get the feeling this is not ready for prime time. That's fine. So, we don't want that to be quite so bodilicious. We would like that to be a little bit closer to the palette here. Just flatten it down. Now we're going to be adding a texture to this, so we don't need it to be super, super dense or complex. But we do want it to not have any obvious mesh glitching, where you can see that the mesh is a mesh. We would like it to be a little bit better than that. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to bring it up and completely hide the tips of these bones in it, just because that'll be a little bit better than showing the tips of those bones. Switch over to inflate and give ourselves a little bit more meat to work with here. There we go. And we'll just inflate these sides too. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. Make it nice and not symmetrical on purpose. There we go. And that should be more or less fine. Let's go ahead and just hit that and then pull this down. But this is not quite ready for action because it's only on the head. We actually need to extend it down into the back, onto the spine as well. It's not just the head, it's also everything back here too. So we're just going to pull two little prongs, yeah, and then we're going to move them into more or less the right spot. I guess this might be a job for the topology move. Nope, the topology move is doing weird stuff. So we're definitely going to end up stretching this into something really awful. As I said, it doesn't really have the right topology, and it doesn't respond properly when you move it. It just kind of stretches the topology out forever. But as long as it's in the right space, we should be able to use an inflate brush to get the topology back into a decent density. Let's find out. Sploofed. Sploofed. Yeah. Where is our snake brush? Just pull that a little bit further. See if we can get it at the right angle here. So that should be, yeah, that's more or less correct. And then we're just going to use inflate to give it some unevenness. Now there is also going to be fat along the underside, so we're going to need to create quite a shelf of goo down there. I'm not sure what the best way to do that is, but I do happen to see that we've got a little protrusion down here. And let's go ahead and just get rid of you. Just grab this protrusion. No, you didn't want to grab it? That's the inflate brush. No wonder. Just grab it and move it. Yeah. Give it a really, really big pull. And then we should be able to just use the inflate brush to soften that into a topology we can work with. And then pull it off to the sides using a grab brush. And repeat the process. Now we're not using X symmetry, and we're not using it on purpose, so that's why we have to do both sides individually here. Just And then hit it with a little bit of inflating just to soften the topology a little bit. And then do some last minute pulling to try and get it to feel a little bit more natural. Yeah, that should be fine. We could merge the two together a little bit better, like just drop them down maybe. Maybe I'll just use a little bit of an inflate brush for that. There we are. And then we can just come down here into remesh and remesh it all. Kapow. Now that it's been remeshed, it doesn't have any of the weird cracks between them. You can see that there's been merged here, even though these were two separate prongs of meshes before. Let's do some last little adjusting here. Oh, that's inflate. I meant move. It's very, very high res at this point. So let's pop over into object mode and see how many objects it is. You can see it's 700,000 tries, which is a little bit heavy for fat. Good news, we don't have to worry about that too much. We can just come down here and decimate. Boom. If we decimate it, we can always simply move this ratio down. Now, dragging the ratio down is quite expensive, so we're going to just type in 0.2, because otherwise it will try and recalculate every frame, which is a little bit too much for us. And you can see that at 0.2, it is still pretty heavy. It's 200,000 tries. Let's bring that down to 0.05. Pardon me while I open a beverage. See how very little was lost. And you might be thinking like, oh, it's just not, you know, it's got like a lot of like creases and stuff. That's actually fine. We could get rid of them. We could just mark it all as smooth and say that's that. But I actually really want those creases to help us with a little bit of the mottled elements that we try and do here. Can I go ahead and just apply that decimate? I think I hit apply. Yeah, there it is. If we take a look, this is what it looks like now. And the reason we applied that decimate is pretty easy. We need to unwrap this. So we're just going to do a smart UV project and let it try and sort that shit out on its own. I don't really care what the UV map is because it's just a gelatinous blob, but we do need to be able to apply a texture to it. So once that's done, we can go back into... Did I close Unity? No, there it is. Go back into Unity and we should see it completely change here. Bleh. And as you can tell, it's got a very different setup in terms of where it is dense and where it is not. The material we were using is no longer very suitable. All we were doing was using white noise, I believe, so it's not hugely interesting. We're going to need to probably change that out for something a little bit more interesting. We also need to change out the whalebone shader here. We're using a setup that creates these like patterns, but these patterns are very easy to mistake for light, because underwater you get this same kind of effect with just the light coming down. And we're too deep for light. There's no light at this depth. But when you look at it, it doesn't really feel like cracked bone. It doesn't really have the kind of hard, rough, what do I want, cracks? You know what I mean? It doesn't have that sort of feel that we really want it to have. We could use a texture. We could try and make this work a little bit better. One of the problems is we're not doing any normal editing. Our normals are very, very primitive. So what we're going to need to do is include some textures. And the reason for that is because we want to be able to use normals. And it would be a little bit challenging to use normals without a texture, without a baked normal map. Trying to think if I don't really know. Yeah, I think it is going to have to be a normal map. So that's a color. That's not what we want. That's what we want. So we're going to go ahead and call this a albedo. And all we do for that is multiply it in here. Nope. And we're also going to need to have a normal map. So we'll just normal. Call that a normal map. And yep, local vertex normal. That doesn't sound right. There it is. Normal. Almost put it in the wrong spot, so we'll save that. Now it's going to look really trashy immediately because we don't have those textures assigned, and you can see it causes all sorts of strange damage to happen. If we were to switch this over into a normal map, we could try and get a little bit of chunk out of it. Let's go ahead and just take a coral pattern normal map for the second here. Just taking a look at a couple of these. This one's probably more like what we want. So that was Coral 04. And that's... No, it's a different Coral 04. There's too many things we've got going here. It doesn't really matter, I suppose. We can do whatever we want as long as it is not super bland. But here's the issue. As you can see, the whalebone shader that we're using is attempting to use the UV map. And you know what? These things, they don't really have a UV map. And that's because we never bothered to make one. So we're just going to make them have a UV map by unwrapping them. Now, normally you can just do smart unwrap and hope for the best. What we're going to do, however, is mark the undersides here as seams, because this is a spot where the player won't really look. So it's the best spot for us to cut these elements apart. So we'll just mark seams. Boom. The only other problem with that is that it's got edges on both sides. See that? So the other thing we're going to do is delete these faces. We could mark them as seams, but we shouldn't ever be able to see these faces, so it's better to just delete the faces. And I think we missed one. Nope, that's not the right face. There it is. So we'll just grab these. And that'll make the cut that we put in a lot more effective. Now we just unwrap. So normally we would do a smart UV project, but in this case we want to use unwrap. And the reason for that is because of the way that these are cut. We would prefer to have subpar UV mapping that is contiguous, rather than good UV mapping that has weird lines across it and cuts the bones up into different sections. I forgot to save. Save. No, there we are. Okay, that's a little better. So this is a very, very basic setup. It's not terribly... is it just me, or is the normal map like super, super big? Maybe we should just punch this up to 2 and 2 here. I don't know. Let's see if this feels right. It's a little bit strange looking for some reason. We're also going to have to go and unwrap the spine, which apparently I didn't do for reasons I have no idea why. I knew I would need them unwrapped. I should have done it back when I created them. Yeah, so it's not quite right because we're just using a random texture, but you can see that it looks a lot less like the sun is hitting it and a lot more like it's been underwater for a while. What we really need to do is get rid of some of the excessive color shifts, and I don't really know whether that is attached to the albedo. Let's go ahead and give it just a white albedo and see whether or not... Okay, so you can see the normal map here is like super, super aggressive. You see how pitch black those become? Even if we have... yeah, we don't want them to be that deep. We would like the normal map to be a lot shallower than this. I think the problem here... Okay, hold on. I just reopened it. So I think the problem here is that we are overriding... Are we overriding it? To me, the way it feels is like we are not... It could just be that the normal map is super dense. But it sort of feels like we're not... we're not getting the core normals, the base normals of the mesh. It feels like we might be overriding them. For now, let's just... I really don't know how normal maps work. Do I need to lerp this or add this to the existing normal, or do I just need to lerp it with 0? Let's find out. So if we create a lerp function, lerp, and we punch this in and we punch this out, we can create a normal depth. The question is whether or not 0, 0, 0 is going to end up being a global value, i.e. no normals, or whether it's additive, and that's the thing I don't know. So if we take a look here, if we bring the normal depth down to 0, you can see how it goes black. That means that the normal map is non-existent here. We're not getting a normal... We don't have a foundation normal. If we look at our setup, we've got a relative vertex offset here. Let's see what happens if we set that up instead. I sort of get the feeling like it's not gonna work. So the problem with that is it's vertex specific, which is very, very low res. I guess we might need to add the normal to the base normal. I would have thought that would have been the default. So we have a world normal value here, see? But I don't think we need the world normal. We need the normal. The local normal. Vertex normal? That doesn't seem right. I should probably just search for this. I don't know. I very rarely need to work with normals in this, what is it called? I always blank on the name of this plugin. Amplify. So let's take a look here. Amplify shader normal. Wow, there's a lot of complex examples. I don't want complex examples. I just want a basic example of how normal works. Maybe I should just open up one of their examples. So if I were to come down here into Amplify Shader. Yes, please move all of that one from that. That's exactly what I wanted to do. I definitely meant to drag one of my plugins into the other. I certainly didn't intend to click on one and accidentally miss. I think it's important that we redo all of this as many times as possible, because it would be a shame if things happened very well here. So we got some built-in samples, assets, materials, shaders, prefabs. Let's take a look here. So we're just looking for something that's got a normal map, and you can see that this has a standard shader, which means it's not what we're looking for. It's interesting that their examples used standard shaders. That's weird. Here's some community shaders. Let's just try and find one that is official, burn, cube map, dithering. Does the dithering have a normal map? It does. So if we open up this basic dithering fade here, yep, and take a look at how they're doing their normals. What is this dot? Wire node? Oh, just to make so it's easy to read, I guess. That's cool. Maybe. So they take the texture coordinates and they get this and they just pump it straight out. So according to that, I'm already doing it right. That's interesting. Is it just... Well, according to this, the problem might simply be that we've got too big of a normal map. If we take a look at the scale value here, I think we might be able to just multiply this by scale. But here's the thing. No, scaling isn't the depth of the normal, is it? I think that scaling is... how many times it's looped. Oh no, okay, so scaling is what we want. Okay, so we'll just change the scaling value. And let's see if that feels a little bit more natural. Well, that was a lot of time spent on, obviously it's already that way, but that's what happens sometimes. I'm glad that my instincts about how it should be were right. Just come on over here and take a look at these bones. We still got like really, really sharp black elements, which kind of implies, you can see how the normals aggressively fade in and out. You see how there's like a pitch black element right in front of me, and then the instant I move my head a little bit higher, it just fades away. That really implies that the normals are malfunctioning. I mean, it could be that this normal depth is like ridiculously over the top for some reason. Like for some reason I created a normal map that is miles deep somehow. But it seems more likely that I've misunderstood how the normal map works. Anyway, when I drop it down to 0.1, it's not broken anymore. It's not really very good either. Let's go ahead and just leave it running, and we'll bring it up to a little bit higher value. So part of the problem may simply be that we have angular bones. Our bones are not smooth, which we'll probably have to tweak in the near future here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do some tweaking. Over here we've got this setup. These are interesting because these should all have the same UV map, but I forgot to unwrap them apparently. So if we were to find the pixel where we're allowed to drag and then switch over into UV edit and then select all of them, you can see that there's no UV map. What I really want to do is unwrap each of these the same way. I don't know how to get Blender to do that, so we're just going to do a smart project instead. Boom. Yeah, this is going to take a little while. There we are. You can see that this ends up creating an extraordinarily dense setup here. We're just going to scale that up by 5 so that it's the same basic scale as the ribs. Now we're going to pop on over to the ribs, and we're going to do some manipulation on these ribs. We can just do a subdivision surface, pow, and that's going to be fine for starters. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn on random adjusting. And we're just going to grab faces and cause damage. Not that much damage. Stop that. What happened? Why can't I see? Okay, so there's no light in this world. Let's add in a light. Light. Sun. We don't want to cause any severe damage in terms of creating divots. One of the issues I've got here is that, you know what? Let's undo. Beep, 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 beep. Let's duplicate this, move the duplicate off to the side and hide it, and let's just use some of our sculpt mode. There should be some kind of crack brush, right? Let's close this thing off screen that you can't see. And what is this? Strips, layer, inflate, prob, crease, smooth, fill, scrape, multiplane scrape, pinch, grab. I mean, I suppose we could use a pinch. Rotate. Can I just use a rotate to... Yeah. Ooh! If I use it... Problem is that the rotate brush is really strong. Let's leave that as a last resort. Slide relax. So that's a different kind of smooth. Cloth? Oh, it's the new cloth brushes. I don't think these are going to be of any use to us. I don't think it's doing anything right now. I have a feeling that we need to look into that differently if we're going to be doing it. These are all masks. So it doesn't look like there's not as many Serpent Knight says, why not turn down the strength? Well, the problem is that the strength is fundamentally the twist brush gets stronger the further away from the center point that you get, because the whole thing is trying to twist by the same amount. So the further away from you are from the center, the further it's going to twist. To get around that, you would have to really, really relax it quite a bit, at which point there's really no reason to use it. You're not going to be getting any of the cracking that you want. But if I were to use a pinch brush, nope, it's not sharp enough. If we lower the radius down, oh, you know what? I bet I need to add another subsurface modifier here. So what I really want is, like, yeah, I'm not getting the chiseling effect that I want. Now, obviously, a chiseling effect is limited to the topology that you're working with. Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to sculpt this. This is not ZBrush. In ZBrush, I could do it really easily because I have pattern brushes that you can just use. But in this, they don't. So what we're going to do is we're just going to grab loops and turn on... I guess the random is not going to work for us. I was thinking it was going to, but you can see that it's not random by face. It's random by vertex, which means that you do not get the right amount of randomness. If it was random by face, then that would work. But since it's not, we're not going to do it like that. Instead, we're going to just turn on a sharp and then just create some skew here and there. All we're really trying to do is break up the, well, I'm not sure. I really want... There is a crack function, right? What was the thing to bring up the function search? I think it used to be shift space, but it's not anymore. No. Why do I get the feeling it's like F8? Blender function search. Operator search. F3. Of course, F3. Perfect sense. So if we go and hit F3 and we go crack. No, break. I can't remember what it's called. It might even be something I've got to turn on first. Shatter? Is it called shatter? All right. Blender shatter function. Cell fracture. My guess is I have to turn it on. Unfortunately for me, it's all videos, so I can't really do it while I'm streaming. Let's turn on our plugins. User edit is under edit preferences. Plugins. Let me just go ahead and let me switch you over to Phoenix Write for a second while I work with this. Add-ons. I always forget what they're called. They're called add-ons. Do you think there's a shatter add-on, or was it a cell fracture? Okay, so it is in fact an add-on. So we'll go ahead and mark that as ready. And we'll just save those preferences. And then we should be able to cell fracture it. Do I have to hit F3? Cell fracture, selected mesh objects. Okay, so we had to turn on the cell fracture plugin. And now we've got the cell fracture pop-up. And don't really know what any of these mean, so we're going to hit OK. Crack. So basically what it does is it creates a set of boxes, and then it cuts the object into pieces based on the boxes. Now this is not a perfect operation. As you can see, we've got some blobular leftovers. But what results is this massive set of random bits. Now if we were to hide these, delete that one, we can just select all of these bits. Shoop, there we go. And they were split into separate objects. There's probably a function for not doing that. But you can see we've got a lot of Z fighting. That implies that the original object is still there. So we're going to go ahead and move the original object off to the side for now. And just select these bad boys. And what we're going to want to do here is move them in a way that allows us to get that result that we want. So in this case, if we do set it up to random, now it's random by object, at least in theory, and we should be able to get a nice crack out of that. Let's try it. Yeah, look at that. That is way closer to what I want. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. Hooray! All right, so now what we need to do is merge them all. J. So the only question we've got now is whether the cracks are, yeah, they're hollow. Look at that. Some of the cracks seem to be hollow. I don't know whether all of the cracks are hollow. No, it's only some of them. My guess is it's just the ones at the baseline here because the base has a missing face. If I was smart, I would have filled in that face before doing this. Let's go ahead and just see how it looks. Over here we've got the whale rib. We're going to go ahead and name that whale rib intact. And then we'll name this whale rib. The reason for that is simple. It'll import these based on their names. So that will override the thing that's currently in Unity and allow us to see the whale rib without having to, fuss with anything. Just close down a lot of these tabs on the other screen for a minute. And then go over to the scene. There we go. Okay, so when I merged it together, I didn't put it in the same spot as it was before. If we take a look, you can see the center line is there. But for us, the center line is down here. If we were to apply the location like so, it's almost going to be right. We're going to have to move it a little bit, but it should be close. There we go. Okay, Let's take a look. We definitely are going to need to do this again, or to fill in the gaps, because those gaps are pretty obvious in terms of having missing internal faces, and we don't want that. We don't want it to be obvious that they are not solid. But you can see the idea here is that we're just kind of cracking it apart a little bit here and there. Some of them don't work, but by and large, this is an approach. Once I polish this approach up a little bit, it's going to be quite good. Hooray for cell fracture. The challenge is, of course, remembering the name. Yeah, so what I really want to do is offset them by a small enough value that they don't get obvious gaps between them. For now, we're going to call this okay. We'll come back and we'll tweak it later. The spine, we don't need to cell fracture it, but we do need to have a lot better presence. It might actually be okay to fracture the spine as well, but it's going to add a lot more density. I guess that might be okay. So if we take a look at the spine, we've still got this albedo that we're not using. If we were to switch this albedo out for something with a little bit more bite, we might be able to get something that feels a little bit more natural without requiring us to break it apart. That's actually a pretty good texture if I could get it to work. But it's a transparent, partially transparent texture, which means there are vast spots that are transparent, i.e. black. We don't want anything that is black. Or any color. We want something that is white and gray only. Oh, that actually might be a really good choice. So you can see that we've got a lot higher density on these, and that's simply because I underestimated how much we had to scale this up by. So we're going to scale it up by another factor of 2. Did that make it worse? I might be going the wrong direction. That's better. All right, so we also need to fix up this nasty shit. What we did is we used the Caustix C. I'm going to go ahead and try Caustix C for this as well. Let's turn off the secondary mask. And for the normal map, do we have a Caustix normal map? I mean, we've got a Caustix, but it's not a normal map. I want a normal map that's got some pattern to it. I guess that wouldn't be such a bad one. So you can see that the fact that it's not a smoothed mesh means that we're getting some obvious stipple. Let's go ahead and make it a smoothed mesh so that we don't have that stipple. All we have to do is say shade smooth, and that'll do. So we'll head back over and see whether that fixes it up a little bit. There's still going to be some creases because we told it to just do whatever it wants. So you can see we've got a crease running down here. We could try and fix that. I don't think it'll matter too much. The normal map is really not behaving, though. I guess that might be a better one. Let's just see how it looks. And we're probably going to have to crack the spine. It's not really, I'm not really buying it. That said, we haven't put any of the life in yet. We haven't put in any of the creatures that are intended to be here. The fat is now really, really bright in comparison to the bone. It actually is not unrealistic. It's surprising how much it seems like that in reality as well. But that might be a little bit too bright. Let's just bring it down, make it a little gray. That's a little bit better. We don't have any life in this yet. This is actually going to be a place where there's plenty of fish and little octopuses, so we're sort of just blocking out how we want it to feel. Now, another issue we've got, these spines are really, really primitive. I just kind of threw them together, and some of them are backwards. So if we wanted to try and get the spines to look right, we'd want to make sure that they weren't backwards. Unfortunately for us, doing that would require us to create a visualization in Blender that would allow us to see the spines, and that would require like textures and shit. I don't feel like it, so we're gonna leave it like that for now. But here's our whale, as you can see. All we're really gonna do is copy these values into the other whales we've got. So paste, and if we go down to 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, well, okay, so that didn't work at all. Oh, what's the... Alright, well, that's fine. Yep. I guess we're just going to put them in the right spot without worrying too much about it. So this would be the last whale, the whale at the bottom of the ocean. No, wait, this is the second whale. So the second whale is the one we want to point into the last whale. And so what we're going to do is shrink it down rather considerably here and just have the tail go off towards the ending there. In reality, it looks like the scaling is all screwed up. This is a skinny ass whale. Yes, it is all screwed up. I'm going to go ahead and just undo that scaling and try again. And that's because I put it into something that had awkward scaling to begin with. Yeah, something like this is fine. Alan says, "Hey Craig, hey Alan, welcome to my stream." And Serpent9 says, "How will the whales be different?" Well, at the moment, they're not going to be different. At the moment, we are simply duplicating this whale over and over and over. In the actual game, the reason the whales will be different is because each of the whales will have a different level of being scanned by something. There is a technological or pseudo-technological thing in the depths, and you're actually here to try and figure out who's screwing with the whale corpses, not to investigate the whale corpses themselves. So every time you get to the next whale, there's going to be something like robots or something that you're going to have to kind of figure out what to do with. But for now, we're just kind of building out the idea of the level. It's very, very early yet. This last whale will be special somehow, but I don't know how. So the next thing I want to do is build the chute that we need. There's going to be a downwards chute right here for the player to kind of go down. The problem is that the movement that I currently have for the player is not really very suitable to going down in a complex way. We're going to have to implement the hand-over-hand crawl at some point, or the actual full dive. We're not quite there yet. For now, we're going to just deal with the fact that it's going to be a little bit awkward. So to build that, we're going to need to put in some core rock elements. We could just spray rocks and try and arrange them, but it's actually quite challenging to arrange loose rocks into a tunnel, which is why we have some rocks that are specifically tunnel related. So we'll just go down here into our prefabs, and we should have a tunnel 90. There it is. So this tunnel 90, as you can see, has a nice round element to it, like so. And that will allow us to create a tunnel out of these. And then we can use bricks to kind of fill in the elements and disguise it. Now, if you're thinking how big this is, that's a good question. Let's find out. So we're currently on the top floor. We're way, way above that. I wanted to just give a quick little look anyway, but, manually to make sure that the distances feel right. These distances will not be as empty. There's going to be stuff, but I want to make sure that the actual ranges involved feel right. I think that it's down here. I don't know whether it must be off to the left here. There it is. Don't worry, there will be something that guides you down. The player won't be as lost as I am. But you can see how slow our dive is. That's because we don't have an actual dive utility. We don't have a dive animation for our character. So that is the drift down dive that you get when you're just trying to adjust your swimming depth. In a situation where you actually want to change your vertical height by quite a bit, obviously you would probably point your body down and kick rather than just slowly sinking like this. So, is it right here? Where are we? Playa. Oh, we're way up there. Let's go ahead and just move ourselves a little bit. Oop, don't want to scale him. So I skipped over a lot of the space. I cheated. We may have to reduce the size of the level. It really depends on what sort of things we put into it. The good news is most of the level is parts that can be moved around fairly easily. What we're looking for is that huge 90-degree pillar, which is actually still off to our right. It's very dark in this level, and that makes it a little bit challenging to do these things. But here is the 90-degree pillar I put in. This looked so small in level view, didn't it? It's really important to remember just how big the things you're creating are, because if it turns out that you've created something that looks right in level view, but from the player's perspective it is way, way too big, which is very common with indie devs, you haven't really done yourself any favors. So you got to be a little careful about that. Anyway, we're going to start to create a tunnel here. It may be that this tunnel is a little bit too big, but on the other hand, what I think I want is for it to be broken into two parts with a platform in the middle. And the idea here is that the platform will be, the platform will contain like some kind of robotic thing for you to scan or do. We're just going to have this kind of have a nice little lead in. And it doesn't matter if this is repetitive because it's backdrop and the player won't see it. They'll see pieces of it, but what we're going to be doing is using stones to hide the base elements here. So these are not going to be as visible as you might think. Basically, they should just serve to guide the player and keep the tunnel contained, not to be visual elements that the player will notice. And I'm sure there is a faster or easier way to place these. I don't happen to know it, so we're just going to do it this way. And so we're going to go ahead and lock the player in with a cap. And then we're going to really start to hammer it in and narrow the hallway considerably. Like that, yeah. And we'll just grab these and duplicate them. They're rotating in the wrong way because I have it set to rotate around pivot instead of rotating around center. It's fine. And after we do this, we'll go ahead and cruise down this and see whether or not it's roughly the right shape for a diver. Now I said I wanted to break it into two, so that we had like a mid-range stop-off of some kind. I think to do that, we're going to need to go and figure out where we want to break it off. An option is to not break it off and to just have a really, really long downwards tunnel. But I think we're going to find this tunnel is really long. So let's go ahead and grab the player and move them into a position where they can more easily move through this. Just drop them down. I think that we need to point ourselves that way. Let's try it. All right, so we're going to have to obviously, there's going to be like cables and stuff here. We're going to have, I don't know what you call it, belaying, cave tools, including lights. So it's not going to be this dark. I just want to make sure that the shape is right. So currently we can't even see the edges. I think that they exist, but am I not on target? Oh, I'm already well within the gap. It's just that it's so big that you can't see it, which is correct because that's the opening. You're not supposed to have a hard time finding it. And as we move down, in theory, we should see, yeah, so these are all, I'm pretty sure these are all height map. And we still haven't seen any of the 90, there's the 90-degree tunnels. So you can see that they're starting to lock us in a little bit. But they're never really very close. You're not getting this impression that you're getting choked. And that's fine because we're actually going to add quite a few rocks inside. And if you were getting choked in by them, we wouldn't be able to squeeze past once we added in the additional rocks. But it is super dark. So what we really want to do is add in some lighting elements. So I'm thinking that what we'll do is we will just have the lighting elements come around on the outside here. And so what we need is ropes that have little lamps on them. Let's go ahead and set up the ropes first. Or we could also set up the lamps first, I guess. It hardly matters. So there's a couple of different kinds of rope things that we know how to do, but the belaying rope isn't one of them. We don't really understand how to create a rope like that. We do have a couple of options, though. One of the options is we can use a tie-down rope, A tie-down rope is intended to be strapped across something, so it's a very tense rope. We'll go ahead and try it. We'll see how it looks. So these are 2-meter tie-downs. Let's just drop one in. Looks like my neighbors have started a party. Doom, 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 doom. They have one kind of music, and that's all they ever play. Which isn't me, like, saying that whatever nationality's music it is bad. I mean, they literally have one album that they play for hours and hours and hours. So, if we do it, you can see that there is like a max range on these, which is surprisingly short. I don't remember it being that short. Did I really make the tie downs that short? Or do they just give up if they can't find their way? Well, let's just adjust it and see whether or not it'll be a little bit faster. No? It really should go all the way to the ground. Oh. Well, that got close enough that it actually hit something. So the tie-down ropes are not as long as they would have to be in order to make this work. So we won't use them. But we can use their basic ropey goodness. We got two basic options when it comes to ropes. We can either use custom ropes using my rope tool, or we can put together a million of these rope elements. Both of them have their advantages, but I think the rope tool is a little bit more flexible. The problem is that my rope tool as is has the wrong setup. So we're going to have to create a new kind of rope. So we're going to go ahead and duplicate rope A here. And we're going to call this rope rope. Because the other ones are actually like power cables and shit. So if we put rope in here, this is what it looks like right now. And it is a rope, but it's got the wrong pieces for this to actually be considered a rope. Now, it is still going to be a power cable. This might actually work fine. Let's go ahead and try this, and then we will adjust it as needed if we decide that it needs to be different. This might be fine. What I might do is simply swap out the rope tips for a light. So if I were to put this here, I would be able to grab... mouse! Stop that. I'd be able to grab the stop and move it, and you can see how the rope just kind of follows along just fine. And so if we were to exchange the rope tip with something that has a light on it, we would be able to get a little bit of fun out of this. So if we have this anchor visual here, this is the anchor visual on the one end, and on the other end we've got this visual. I think we only want the light on one of these ends, and I think it would make sense for it to be on the start end. The reason for that is because we're going to be putting these back to back to back to back to back. We don't need a million of them. So here, we're going to go ahead and just pop in our light. Now, we should have some lights that are just available for us to use. Why aren't my lights here? Cheap rock light mount. There we go. Not in the right spot, but we can fix that. So if we just drop this here, I think it would make more sense for it to be on the bottom. So that's what we're going to do. That's not lined up. There we are. Now, what we probably need to do is replace the mount, this box that we've got here. This is very primitive, but we shouldn't have any problem doing that later. It's something where this is going to be a prefab, so it's fine. So we're just going to stick this in, and we're going to make sure that it's got a light worth looking at. So we're using a spotlight here instead of a point light, and that's going to backfire on us. So we're going to switch it to a point light. Now, the reason we're using a spotlight rather than a point light is because this looks like it would be a spotlight, but in our case, I think it makes more sense if we use it as a point light. So we'll just, there we go. We should be able to save this. Just apply it. Just a bow. And then what we can do is simply duplicate the rope. There's a lot of ways of doing that, and the easiest way is to come in here and just drag it into the stop. Pow, like that. And that will make sure that the start is properly set up. And all we have to do is rotate it 180. And you can see that it is on the wrong side. Did I somehow rotate the tip? Well, I guess it doesn't matter whether it's on the wrong side or the right side. It's fine. All we need to do is take the stop for the new rope and make it work. We don't want to go too far between lights, so we're going to just bring that up here. Make sure that it's not clipping through. It's not. Okay. And we'll just drop in another rope right there. Pow. I'll flip it. No. Oh, I see. That's why it was wrong, because we flipped it. So instead of flipping it that way, we'll flip it this way. That's better. But it still needs to be 180. Yeah, that's definitely more in line with what I had in mind. Boom. And grab the stop here. And obviously it's going to have to be a lot less far. Just bring that down. Oh no! There we go. Just trying to get it in. Oh, wow, that didn't rotate anywhere near right. We're just trying to get it into a spot that makes sense. Something like that makes more sense than most of the other setups we've got. So we'll leave it like that. And then once again, we'll rope, drop it in here. Boom. And once again, we're going to want to rotate that 180 and move it. And then we'll take the anchor and move it. Got a lot of coiling going on that I don't really understand. That shouldn't be happening. But whatever. And then we'll just why am I having a hard time with this rope? There is a blockade. I don't see anything blocking. Let's move this stop. Okay, so now we're getting a problem where it's backing up. Did I forget to clear these? I don't think I have to anymore. I think I made it so that doesn't happen. It should be okay. Let's just move it over to the other side. Yeah, that'll do. So let's just hit play and see whether or not this feels right. We're going to move the player over to where we can see one of these lights. Should be on our left here. Yeah, see? So as you can see, the lights are fairly clear. And the rope is really pretty obvious even in the dark because it has emissive textures. Still getting some weird shader glitches. I'm not sure what those are or how to fix them. But you can see just how much more obvious things are when we've got a little bit of light in the area. And we haven't even added in any decorative rocks or anything, so... how long have we been doing this? An hour? I suppose we can do it for a little bit longer. I think that this will probably be fine. I think this is not a bad setup. What I don't like is how far we can see. I guess it might make sense. There's not really a whole lot of current in this area, but I might pump the fog up considerably, because we can really see very, very far right here. If we change the fog values, so we go over into the players. I might have to stop just because I can't get the music out of my head. Boom bum bum boom bum 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 boom bum bum boom bum. Here, this one. So you can see that the fog is... Oh, well, the fog is completely set up wrong, so that would explain it. The top of the fog, the bottom of the fog, those are obviously wrong now. We'll have to think about that. I don't even think we were wanting... we don't even want y-axis fog, because we're moving on the y-axis here, so it doesn't make any sense. Fog distance min and fog distance max. Let's lower this down to 50. And basically, if we adjust the value here, we should be able to see it change in real time. Yeah. Okay, so at 30 it's a little bit small. 40 seems about right. That'll preserve even if we change to another... even if we stop play mode, that'll still work. So we're now swimming upside down, and it is really confusing. We're going to have to fix some of these controls. Very, very primitive controls at the moment. Going up is not something that we're terribly good at. I'll have to remember that when I'm making levels. But on the other hand, what we really need is a dive mode. Something where verticality is the focus. So we lowered it to 30, but you can still see quite far. That's on purpose, and I think it suits us pretty well. Yeah, I think that we're okay here. There's a lot of stuff left to do, but yeah, it's starting to work. It's starting to feel okay. I guess what we'll do is we'll take some beauty shots of some whales and some cables, and then we'll call it a day. So if you've got anything you want to say, sooner rather than later on that, because all I'm going to do is take some screenshots and sign off. And then maybe I'll dance to whatever music this is. Boom, 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 boom. You know what? Let's do a little bit more editing first. Now that I've got these whales, it should be pretty trivial for us to do a raise and lower terrain to get the whale to be to feel like it's part of the terrain instead of being just on top of it. So basically what we can do is we can create some half-buried elements here. And then we can do a texture painting to try and make it feel a little bit less... Why is it not working? I think it might just be that it's too faint of a brush. There we are. Basically, what we're going to want to do is make it seem like it's sunk into part of the sand that is a little bit more serious, a little bit less bright. So we'll just lower the thickness of this brush rather considerably and try and give it some real, like, this sand is being blocked by bone sort of situation. Just to make it feel like it's part of the sand instead of being a mesh that we dropped on top of another mesh, you know? Without the fish that we're going to need, it's not really terribly convincing. But we're just going to go ahead and see how it feels. Should be right here. No, did I miss it? It's probably just a little bit further off to the right. Without the level elements that we need to guide us around, it's actually quite hard to find this stuff. Okay, yeah, well, now we're going the right way. More bones. Bones. Oh, that actually looks terrible, that little blob of fat right there. We're going to want to get rid of that, shave it off. Still the basic idea. Seems sound enough. Go ahead and actually just stop here. Just paste it here, and again over on Dear Twitter. And now let's take a picture of the lamps going down into the depths. Ooh, wow, they just turned it way up. No, that's not the right tab. That's not the right tab. That's the right tab. Indie dev depths. No, don't get rid of it or save it. Just let me edit it. There we are. Depths. All right, so I will see you folks on Saturday. I gotta go and do some stuff, I suppose. It's so weird looking. Huh. Did that work? Yeah, okay. Have a good one, everybody. I'll see you around.